Jaime, welcome to the Outperform podcast. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
I appreciate it. How do you define outperforming in your life, and what does it mean to you to outperform?
To outperform to me is, and maybe this isn't, what other people would think of it as, but for me, it's to be better every day, to constantly be learning. My entire business and my career, but my business has been built on that continuous learning and thinking about things differently. So paradigm shifts and like, I've never thought about it that way, or that's how other people are looking at it, is to be having that constant learning every day. So if I can look back and say, yesterday was a rough day, or I'm tired, but I've learned something, right? And I look at something a little bit differently, even if it's just a marginal improvement, that's a good thing. And so I think, to me, I see so many people that, and I've experienced it in the past, where we get paralyzed and we're standing in the same place day in and day out. Mm-hmm. We don't take the chance. We don't take a step forward because we don't know what's going to happen. And so for me, it's just continuing to take a step. Mm-hmm. Some are big, some are little.
I am a huge believer in that. Before we go into some more specifics, tell people a little bit more about who Jaime is and what it is that you do.
So Jaime Taets, I'm the CEO of Keystone Group International. We are an organization that's really focused on helping organizations grow in a healthy and sustainable way. And we believe that there's kind of three pillars to that, and it's strategy, people, and culture. And you can have the best strategy on the planet for where your business is going, whether you're a solopreneur or you're a bigger business. And if you're not really integrating a strategy around your people and around the culture and what you want it to be, and if it's where you want it to be, then your strategy is just words on a sheet of paper. And so we feel strongly, which I know you do as well, is that performance piece and how you get the most out of the people you have is what actually drives your strategy and the ultimate results for your business.
Mm-hmm. What is your outperforming story?
Well, I'm going to be real transparent here with everybody because
we appreciate transparency. So please bring it on us.
Yeah. It's important for people to understand that we all have journeys, and when you interact with someone, when you see someone's success or where they're at in life, I think a lot of us think, wow, they're lucky, or they must have had it easy, or, and all of us have a journey, and we have things that we've gone through. So my journey starts with, being raised by a single mom who had me at 16 and, put herself through night school, worked full time, and, had help for me, and growing up in that environment where she's built a successful business from literally nothing, and seeing that as a role model. It's hard for me in my life, and it's not that I've had everything in my life either. There were many tough years, but looking at that and looking at myself now and thinking, really, is it really that bad? Like, I think I can figure this out, because I've had that role model of like, it could be worse, right? The bottom could fall out. Other things could happen, but you've always got the opportunity every day to just take a step forward. Mm-hmm. And if she had just decided that she was going to be a statistic and just, well, this is my life now, and this is what I want to be, or this is what I have to be because society tells me, I wouldn't be where I was at. She wouldn't be where she was at. And so that really what started my Outperform story, I think, is having that background and saying that there's nothing that you can't get through.
Yeah.
There really isn't anything that you can't get through with the right mindset. And you and I talk a lot about mindset is it's just having the mindset to say it can be better tomorrow. Today might not have been a perfect day, but every single day you've got to be learning and getting better. And so I think that perspective is a huge basis for where I'm at today and why I have the mindset that I do about the growth of my business.
What kind of business does your mom have? Just out of curiosity.
She's a financial advisor.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if you were to identify, it sounds like work ethic might be one of them, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, but some of the specific lessons that you learned from your mother, if you would, let's maybe say 3 of them.
Yeah, I could come up with 15, but we only have time for 3. No,
maybe go top 3.
Yeah, thanks. Scott also knows I could talk all day long, so he's like, just keep it to 3, please. The top ones are probably work ethics in there, but it's really resilience is what I would call it, is when faced with something that you don't know what the next step is. You just have to have resilience and confidence in yourself that you'll figure it out as you go. I think that's what she taught me, being 30 years ago, her being in the financial services industry, one of the only females building a book of business, and being, a single mom, or, and being a young mom and figuring how to build your own business in an industry that's very male dominated. I think you have to have resilience. You got to pick yourself back up off the floor some days, right? There's days you want to give up. There's days you don't want to make that extra call, right? From a sales standpoint. And so I think she taught me a lot about, and she still does, about just like, you'll figure it out. Let's just keep going, right? Just be resilient, pick yourself back up. And a failure is not a failure if you fail forward, right? It's a learning. It's growing. The second one is probably humility, and just coming from humble beginnings. I've just innately been humble in how I've kind of built my business, and how I look at what I'm doing is I want to make sure that what we're doing has an impact and gives back, and is not out there trying to make a profit and forgetting about the people and the relationships. And that people over profits is definitely something that I saw her doing, where she had choices in her career to make those decisions. And the third one is probably just philanthropy and serving. Not having a lot at the beginning, I still saw her actively involved in the community when she could, right? Volunteering her time and other gifts that she had. And it's not always money, and being in that servitude space. And so I think it created that servant leader in me when I was in corporate, and also when I went out on my own, is to say that there is a way to build and be successful while also serving others first, right? And giving before you expect to receive. And so that's been, for Keystone, I'm very proud of the values that we've built and the business that we've built based on that, because we believe in the give, get. Right? That methodology is that we don't need to always receive right away, but it feels really good to connect people and to help and to do that and put that out into the world. And the world will send that back when you need it.
It's a great philosophy for life.
Yep.
So it sounds like you learned some tremendous lessons from your mother, and you learned them early on. I'm curious on the evolution of your professional journey and how you got to where you are today. Because you said you were in corporate.
Yep.
Talk to me just a little bit about how that's evolved into what you're doing now with Keystone.
Yeah. So my background is really in really large corporate. So I worked for the largest privately held corporation in the world. Lived abroad, did a lot of global travel, and got just amazing. I always say I grew up there. Like, they really raised me to be different, to think differently, and the training and the investment that they had in me was amazing. And so I got to see not only different cultures, but different businesses and the way people do business around the world, how they make decisions differently. And so I always say I got to get in the head of the leaders and really be in those rooms where it was like, wow, that was a great question. Like, that kind of changes how we look at the situation. And so that's where my strategy and the people component of my experience came in. And when I decided to go out on my own, the reason was because I had grown up in a small business, right? I had seen what I call the roller coaster ride. And other members of my family also owned small businesses, so it wasn't just my mom. But I knew that what I had learned in big business had to have something that could apply to them, right? Like, how could we teach them some of these things? I call it, they didn't need the Harvard MBA kind of consultants, but there was things that they could learn to make their business run better and to ultimately, keep them from the 2 a.m. thoughts, right? And keep them from the anxiety that really drives being a business owner. And so that's what Keystone was built on, is that experience and saying, there's got to be a way for me to take that and have more impact. And for impact for me was to actually be able to see it change, the paradigm or the shift for a business, and see them come out the other side in a better place. Very hard for me. And there are some corporate environments where you can, but it was very hard for me to see the impact in a large corporate environment. It always felt like turning the Titanic if we wanted to make, to really see that. And so it started to be an unfulfilling thing for me. And it was just because of what I needed. And I needed to see that impact on a day-to-day basis and feel like I was moving in the right direction.
So I haven't had a lot of people on the Outperform podcast that talk about leadership. And I'm curious because I don't care what your title is. We're all leaders. We're looking to
100%.
lead our family, our friends, maybe our team, our company, whatever it happens to be. So based on your experiences with Keystone as well as in larger corporate, what are some of the biggest, I don't know if I would say mistakes, but where do you start people with thinking about how they can become an outperforming leader or a better leader?
Yeah. The first thing that I see, and I see this with a lot of our coaching clients too, is them understanding who they really are as a leader. Because I think in corporate, we have an idea of what a leader looks like based on the leaders we've had.
Mm-hmm.
And we believe that that's how you have to be a leader. So if you've been under somebody who's a heavy servant leader, then maybe that's the example that you've had, which is what I had in corporate, is those great models. If you've been under somebody that doesn't look at leadership that same way, right, it is very micromanagement, you're absorbing some of that leadership and how you've seen it modeled. What I see is that people are oftentimes better leaders outside of the office, with the soccer team or at the PTA or in their community groups. They're their authentic leadership self, and they're able to be their self. And when they come to the office, sometimes they shut some of those superpowers, as we call them, they shut their superpowers off because they're trying to be the leader that they think their organization needs.
Mm-hmm.
And if they would just tap into those things that are innately them, they can be, you don't have to be like someone, exactly like someone to be as good of a leader as them. You have to be who you are authentically, because that's where people really trust you. And so, I see that dichotomy a lot with leaders.
Yeah. So how do you get them to tap into that authentic leadership, professionally speaking? Because I'm sure some people are probably thinking, well, Scott, I lead an entire company or I lead a large team of people. I can't be the same leader to them that I am on the soccer field. How do you get people to be better, authentic leaders in their professional lives?
So I actually do think you can take the same thing you're using on the soccer fields into the office. It's applied in a different way.
I agree, for the record.
Yeah. And that's what it really is what are those things that really make you who you are? So I'll give you an example of what my superpowers are. A couple of them. So one of them is being a maximizer. So whether I'm on the soccer field or I'm in a corporate boardroom, I have an ability, it took me many years to figure out that everyone else didn't have it, an ability to look at people, understand their strengths, and say, this is actually how we should organize the work we're doing, and this person's best suited in this role because it's going to maximize who they are and what they bring to the table. And so I have this ability to very quickly understand that. I can use that same superpower on the soccer field, or in the hockey rink, or in the PTA, and you're putting a team together, right? So all of those things that people do outside of work, it's very similar. Another superpower for me is high degree of empathy, and it probably comes from my background and my upbringing. Is I have an ability to sit in someone else's seat and look at the world through their lens and say, how is this going to feel if we communicate this way, if we make this change, if we do what we are going to do? We've got to understand it from other people's perspectives. I feel like you can use that outside and inside. Now, the issue that most people have is they have these superpowers and have these strengths, but you have to use them within some guardrails, right? So there's leadership guardrails that you have to use to be a good leader, but within the guardrails, you have to be authentically you, or no one's going to want to follow you.
Interesting.
That's how I look at it.
So to get people to tap into their own superpowers, sort of like the ones you mentioned for yourself before, is that just asking yourself what comes easily for me but is difficult for others? Or what are some questions that people can ask themselves to identify what they're uniquely good at? Yeah.
So there's a couple characteristics of superpowers that we usually help people with. So you've got kind of three different levels. You've got your talents, which some of those are just innately who you are, right? You're born with them. They have talents. Then you have strengths, which are things you have worked. So think of a muscle. You're getting stronger, and you've taken those talents and you've made some of them a strength. To get them to a superpower, you have to really be naturally good at them, meaning you don't have to think about it. It's not really, really hard for you. It's not hard for me to think about the empathy piece of it. It's like it turns on even if I didn't want it to, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's those things that you're naturally good at. You have to want to learn more and do more in that space. So you have to be driven to want to learn more and use that superpower more. So some of our strengths we're good at, but they're not things that we're driven to do more of. And it has to give you energy. So with a lot of our clients, we do what I call, just relatively simple, I do an energy journal. So I take a week at a time and I tell them, I want you to write down hour to hour, just what your energy flow feels like. You know, you came out of that meeting and your blood was pumping. We all know that feeling. And you're like, man, we just solved an issue. We just tackled something. Write that down. Why? What happened in the meeting? What was going on? And same thing with when your energy is low, right? I just feel like I came out of that, or that interaction with that person just sucked me dry, right? Of energy. What was happening at that moment? And as you look at that over a week or 2 week period of time, you start to see trends of when I'm in this situation, that's when I'm in my superpowers. So for me, it was when I was in large corporate discussions and we were talking about people and the impacts on people, and I could contribute and say, hold on, if we do that, let's think about the impact it's going to have. That empathy component I was pulling on, and I could actually impact our decisions and what we were going to do. I would literally come out of those meetings and feel like my blood pressure was through the roof, like your blood is pumping, and it's a physical reaction to you feeling those. So I think a lot of it is around the things that give you natural energy. Your superpowers are in there somewhere. And the thing that people get hung up on is like, I have to put a word to it. And so I came up with words, right, to help describe mine. But it's just tell yourself that it's when I'm doing these types of things, right? That's when I'm in the zone. I'm in my sweet spot. So I don't know if that answers your question.
Yeah, it absolutely does. And I was curious to hear if you just had kind of a larger overarching philosophy on leadership or whatnot. I know you talked about situational leadership before, but is there kind of one leadership philosophy or a quote or something that you live by?
I think it's really, for me, the one that sticks out, and I'm not going to probably get this exactly right, but there's a Charles Darwin quote that just talks about, the strongest people, which I think of as kind of the ones that can lead us through anything, whether personal or professional, are not the ones that are necessarily the smartest or the fastest or sometimes always the best at what they do. They're the ones that are most adaptable to change. And I think as leaders, we are the same thing, is that to be a leader, you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. You have to be the person that asks the best questions. And that's how we get the change, right? And the momentum to happen. And so when you say everyone in an organization is a leader, I agree with you, or they should be. In a really good organization, the organization should be focused on building leaders at all levels, not just the people that have a box that has boxes underneath them, right? That's management. That's hierarchy. And so for leaders, it's do you have the influence and the ability to really ask the right questions and get people to move in a different direction or in the right direction without any hierarchical power at all. I think that's the true test of a leader.
I want to come back to change in a second, but for people out there that are listening that maybe don't have the title of senior manager, executive, whatever it happens to be, how do you get people to see themselves as a leader, regardless of what title might be?
By helping them define the word leader differently.
Okay.
Go look up the definition of leader. Leader is someone who influences and motivates people towards a goal. Has nothing to do with if you have direct reports or not.
Influences and motivates
and
people.
That's the exact right. But that's, it's all about influence, motivating. Managers direct and control towards a goal, right? They have a goal to achieve and they move people in that direction. That's the box on the org chart. Not all managers are leaders, and not all leaders have to be managers, right? Have to manage people. And so when you look at your leadership ability, this is why I push so hard on looking at it outside of work, is you have that ability. You're showing it in many other areas. You're also showing it at the office if you bring that in and say, you and I can be peers, and I can help you think differently about the situation that we're both trying to fix or the problem we're trying to solve. And by me influencing you and bringing my expertise in, to me, that's leading you. That's leading. And so our society has put leadership in a rank, kind of you have to be at this level to be a leader. But
Sure.
But it's really more about your ability to communicate effectively and inspire people to something that maybe they weren't thinking about before, or a different solution.
Sure. I want to come back to something you said before as far as being able to adapt to change, simply because I always say this, it is the one universal thing that I hear from every business group or organization that brings me in to work with them or to speak, is something to the effect of, we're going through a lot of change right now, and some of our people are kind of struggling to deal with it or to handle it. What is your starting point to helping people better respond to and adapt to change?
So it's funny, I just did this presentation to an organization on Friday, but we have a philosophy that if you look out there on change, right, in the big corporate environments, people are they've seen it, but there's these really 10-step process to how you get somebody through a change, right? Cotter's change model. It's not that it's bad, it's just super complicated for the average everyday change. We look at it as there's 4 table stakes, right? 4 fundamentals of change. The first one is trust. And the problem with that is you can't wait till the change is happening to build it. So it's got to be a proactive thing, is what does the trust look like in your environment? And I will be able to tell you whether or not change is going to be successful. And so it's, as leaders, how do we build that trust? And there's a couple ways we do that. The first one is how we articulate the message, how we speak and communicate, and how we are transparent is the fundamental. So we've got some great tools that we use with our clients on how they can communicate with more transparency without it feeling weird to them. So simple things like when you're communicating to an employee about a change, or a group of employees, talking about, what we know will happen, what we're uncertain of at this point. There are some things we don't know answers to, what may happen, and what absolutely will not happen. And then how can you help? So by doing that kind of vulnerable, open, like we're admitting as leaders that we know the next 10 feet and we know where we're going. We just know there's going to be things that might change. It goes a long ways in building trust and bringing people along, because they're like, okay, so in 2 weeks when things are just a little bit different, I don't immediately distrust you because you said there's going to be some things we're still figuring out, but here's what we know. Sure. And we want to share what we know with you, and making sure that you're communicating that message in a really, really fundamental way so people get it. I think we underestimate as leaders a lot people's capacity for change because we haven't done the work before the change. So the big changes, so the group I was talking to, big technology changes, people's job functions are going to change on a daily basis, which is what a lot of organizations, it's transformational change. That doesn't happen every day, but when it happens, it's very important to the organization. And that's where organizations usually fall down, because they haven't taken each day-to-day incremental change and used it as an opportunity to build trust with their employees, so that when the big stuff comes, I go, you know what? We've gotten through all this other stuff. I know Scott's got my back. Like, we'll figure this out. Right? We've waited till the event happens, and now we want people to change. How do we get people to change? We're not doing the work ahead of it. That's my philosophy on it.
And I'm curious, because you brought up communication a couple of times, and I see it with leaders as well as I see it with salespeople, and I guess it would probably just people in general. We think communication is just about the words that come out of our mouth. What additional insights do you have or recommendations for people to be effective communicators as far as possibly their nonverbals or the way that they say things? What advice do you give people on being a leader and communicating that effectively?
Yeah, I think it's first off, just being super aware of what your communication style is, because there's no right or wrong communication style. It's all in the receiver. Right? It's what they need. So when we work with leaders and we've got a system, and actually they're scientifically proven on how people interpret messages. So they've done studies where, you are to speak to a large organization, and then they're surveying people as they're walking out of a room on messages, what they heard you say. There are 4 distinct communication styles. It's been scientifically proven that 4 different people with different communication styles are hearing 4 different things from your message, and you're saying the same thing to all of them. But because different things are connecting with them, and experience comes into this as well, is but there's actually 4 different styles that people are hearing it, and they've proven that out.
What are those?
So we use terms that we call, so there's a blueprint communication style, which they hear process, right? They hear steps. They kind of think of the world in terms of rules and what the boundaries are. And so when you're talking, they're hearing those kind of rules and steps to how they should outperform the norm, or, whatever that talk is. Then there's the action communication style, which actually feeds off of quick decision making. And they're hearing about 20% of what you say. They're just hitting on the high points when your voice goes up, like all of those types of things. Then we've got the nurturing communication style, which for a lot of salespeople, you talk about salespeople, they have issues sometimes with the nurturing style, because many salespeople have action. Let's get to the point. I want to tell you about it. And I want you, and make a decision, push to make a decision. When you've got a nurturing communication style, that person wants to build a relationship with you. So they see you up front, and they just want to know you. What you're talking about matters, but it doesn't, right? They want to know, they like your energy in the room, and they're totally vibing into that. And then the last one is the knowledge communication style. And they're really listening for the statistics and the data that you're going to share with them that actually proves your point. So if you get up and you're high nurture and it's feelings and you're just inspiring, the knowledge communication style is going to hear that and go, yeah, but show me the data that says that I should believe what you just told me that I should do. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So as human beings, every day we're interacting. I can even see it in my kids. So we teach that you can see that in even kids. I have one kid that if I just leave him a list of things to do, she'll check off the box. I have another kid that I actually have to tell him that you're really good at this. Can you help everybody else be good at it? And can you do more of that for me? And that strokes his, he's good at that. And then I have another child where to get them to do chores, I have to talk to them about why this contributes to our family, because we're all really busy and I need you to be part of the team. He's a nurturer. And I can get them to do the same thing, but I have to change my communication style with them for them to hear the words I'm saying.
Sure.
Does that make sense? So I'm giving you really high level on this.
No, it's fine. And it's great. So for people out there that are leading teams, I mean, is this just knowing the individual personalities of the people on your team to be able to tap into what they're going to respond to the best? Is that
part of it is personality, but what they've actually seen is part of it is a deeper communication style. So someone may appear to be a certain way, but in the way they actually receive information is different than sometimes how they. So for example, when you look at this communication style, I'm a high nurture. Most people would look at me and see female CEO, right? Blaze their own trail, see me as an action. I take action and make decisions and go. If they try to sell to me or communicate to me in high action style, I get turned off very quickly. Meaning I don't want to have a relationship because I feel like it's a one way. They just want something from me. If they didn't know that, if they just profiled me based on my title and my position and that, they would probably read me wrong and communicate in a different way. So the goal really is for you to individualize your communication. This is the hardest thing about leadership. If leadership was easy, everybody would be actually doing it. It's individual by person and how you get them to change, how you get them to respond to communication. And that's why if we have leadership in our title, but we do it 20% of the time because we've got other things to do, we're not probably great leaders, even though we have the potential to be, because we're not spending time doing it at the level we should. So
before we close this up, if people are interested in learning a little bit more about what it is that you do, Keystone, etc., where would you like them to go? What can they do?
Yeah, so they can reach out to me directly. It's Jaime, Jaime, at KeystoneGroupIntl.com. They can also go to our website, KeystoneGroupIntl.com. Lots of information out there about what services we have and how we help people. Always willing to connect on LinkedIn as well. But we want to just kind of continue this dialogue. And I love that you're doing this too, because it's hopefully shifting people's paradigms and having them just think differently. Right?
Absolutely. And I will put links for all of that in the show notes on how people can connect with you.
Perfect.
Last question. What I always like to say is from information to implementation. So we have thrown maybe a lot at people in regards to, I know it was high level, but a lot of different concepts in regards to leadership. If people are going to take some of this information and implement it into what it is that they're doing, what would you have them do? What would your advice be?
The first place to start is to do a self-assessment on leadership versus management.
Oh,
right?
Okay.
Really look at yourself and how you operate in day to day. And are you doing more leadership, inspiring and motivating and influencing people? Or are you spending most of your time directing and controlling and, and driving people towards a goal? Because I think that's the first step in really understanding your own personal leadership journey and where you need to go, what help you might need.
Where can is there a specific place they can find that assessment, or what does that look like? Sorry to interrupt you there. I'm just trying to help people out.
I should probably create something.
You should create something that's on your to-do list.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a good place to do that outside of just kind of doing a self-assessment yourself on just where you're spending your time. And we talk about, right, the 80-20 rule. Are you on one side of the spectrum or the other? Mm-hmm. And is there opportunity for you to shift that and be thinking differently about leadership and really helping to understand what leadership actually is, and it's the inspiring and motivating and how to pull from personal and from your experience in there.
Versus directing and controlling and the management. Because I just want to make sure that we have a lot of different people listening to this, that they're clear on the difference between being a leader and being a manager.
And you may need to be part of both, but it's where are you spending the most of your time? Right?
Okay.
We want to be skewing in that leadership space, no matter what our role is.
Okay. Any other words of wisdom or anything that you would like people to do other than just a self-assessment?
Yeah, I think the only other word of wisdom is that, we all have ownership of our own, how we show up every day. And I think it's important for us to understand as leaders, whether or not you have direct reports or not, is that the way we decide to show up and the approach that we take to situations has a ripple effect to what we do. And knowing that and making good decisions on how we react to situations, how we solve problems, and those types of things can really have a positive or negative ripple effect in our organizations, in our communities, and that. And so just being really aware that we've been given the ability to lead, we have to use it in a positive way.
On behalf of everyone listening, Jaime, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. And to you out there, wishing you the best of health, happiness, high performance, and keep outperforming. Have a great day.